The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
It's the Best Birth Podcast, where we interview experts that elevate you as you prepare your heart and mind to have the best birth.
Each episode will interview professionals so you are prepared for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Our experts will build your confidence and empower you to trust your intuition throughout your pregnancy.
This audio is taken from videos on YouTube. Watch the entire episodes on YouTube at Birth Made Mindful. Welcome to the Best Birth Podcast. We are excited to have our guest here today to talk all about postpartum depression as it applies for men and women after birth. And we have Jen to introduce us.
Yes, thank you, Braxton, for coming. Braxton Dutson is an LCSW and certified sex therapist through ASECT and supervises therapists seeking ASECT certification. Braxton is the owner of Tigress Consulting, providing consultation, supervision, and training to clinicians and groups seeking to improve their work with clients in the sexual health. He is a full-time clinician at the Healing Group in Salt Lake City, Utah. Braxton also provides mental health counseling to teenagers with IEPs at a local high school in Utah. Clients primarily seek him for issues pertaining to feeling out of control with their sexual behaviors, distress in a relationship, sexual education, and sexual dissatisfaction. He runs a free online postpartum fathers group every second Wednesday of the month called The Man Cave. He hosts a popular sexual health podcast called Birds and the Bees, which provides education for clinicians, couples, and parents about sexual health. He frequently presents to professionals and parents about sexual health and relationships. Thank you. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me. This is fun to be on the show with y'all.
Yeah. So we'll just start out. How is postpartum affecting men? I don't feel like I've ever considered that.
Right? We often start thinking of baby. When it comes to birth, we think of baby, we think of mom, and the majority of the support has typically been formed for the creation of the baby, which makes a lot of sense. And what we're finding is that men typically start to develop or can develop postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, especially if they've dealt with anxiety or depression beforehand. But we're looking at roughly 1 in 10 men will develop a form of postpartum depression or anxiety, and they're 50% more likely if mom is experiencing any of those postpartum symptoms as well.
So does that then have both partnerships experiencing mood disorders after the baby's there?
Yeah.
How are you helping your clients to overcome that?
So one of the ways that I help, first, getting guys into a group is super difficult, which is a big reason I call it the Man Cave. We call it the Man Cave because I focus on the group differently than more of a, tell me about your feelings and how things are going, because that doesn't flow very well with guys. So oftentimes, in fact, I word it this way, that we are getting together to try and build our portfolio of support to mom, baby, and ourselves as well. And the majority of the men that I work with often want to support their partners, and so they're willing to give themselves support to be able to bolster the support they give to their family.
And how can a partner offer support?
That's a really good question, especially depending on what symptoms are going on. So if we're to talk about postpartum anxiety, oftentimes, depending on anxiety and the intensity of it, we think of a new mom and she's stressed about what time feeding needs to be and if baby's going to go down. And if they don't go down, then what if this and what if that, and cleanliness. And there could be a lot of things that anxiety will pick at and start identifying as a thing that they have to focus on. And so if a partner is watching their spouse going, she going crazy, what am I supposed to do here? I encourage men to start educating themselves about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, whatever you're starting to see. Get in and get professional help. You don't need to be the only person that has to have all the answers, especially in a space where it's brand new. This may be your first baby. It could be your fifth. And all of a sudden this new mom has shown up and it's never been this way because with the other babies that you've had. So get some professional support. Get into a doctor, get into a therapist that specializes in postpartum anxiety. And then from there, there's groups you can get a part of, and then getting more information from books or other like Instagram. There's a lot of influencers that are really helpful when it comes to postpartum support. That way you can start addressing, instead of walking into a room being like, stop having anxiety, because that doesn't work. being able to be there as a support, go, I know that you're feeling stressed about this. Let's take some levels and maybe go take a break. Remember, your therapist said, let's make sure you're getting something to eat. Maybe when's the last time that you took a nap? There's some of these things that you can help as a partner to walk your spouse through or your partner through to be able to start cutting them off or cutting off the things that add to the anxiety, such as less sleep, not eating, ruminating over thoughts, not seeing the sun. Oftentimes we can be cooped up in a house. So those are some of the basics that I say, let's make sure we're ticking the basics first.
And how can a partner do that without offending
Ooh.
the individual who is suffering or struggling?
That's what we talk about in the group mostly, because they're saying, I'm trying to support, and she's saying, stop doing what you're doing, and why are you acting so different towards me? When a partner is a little bit more defensive and saying, I am not, this is a real thing for me to be afraid of. Germs are, this could really hurt our baby, which is true. And we have to go with what is protocol. Kids are going to get sick. We can't stop them from getting sick. So being able to be empathetic towards your partner and go, I understand that this is really important and I want the safety of our baby too. Like joining with them can be helpful. And that's why it's also important to have that professional support that you can lean on, where it's not you versus your partner, but you can turn to your partner and say, hey, remember your therapist said that it is important for you to get outside and go just for a walk. Go for a walk. I've got baby. And oftentimes you get a partner that's like, no, I have to be the only one with baby. I won't have parents watch my kids. I won't do this or that or the other. And having a professional support where you could say, you're supposed to go for a walk for 10 minutes. Let me be with baby. They're down. Everything's going to be fine. Go take your 10-minute walk. Sometimes there's that pushback. Sometimes there's not. But if you continue getting that pushback, that's where you can lean on that therapist or that professional to be able to say, hey, we're really having a hard time here. And that's where medication can be supportive, and you supporting them with medication or depending on the severity of it.
I remember my mom would always ask my husband, how's she doing? Is, what are all the signs and things? So what would you say, could you go through the differences between postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression?
Yeah. So postpartum anxiety is going to focus more on the anxious side of things, which is going to be keyed up, feeling on edge, having a focused anxiety. I think of anxiety as more of a bully, where you've got a bully in the back of your mind saying, what if this happens? What if? And the what if word is consistent with prove to me that this is going to happen, or prove to me that baby's safe. And that is one of the hardest things, because every time you actually move to prove something, there's another uncertainty. So we're constantly trying to prove a thing that you can't necessarily prove. Is baby breathing? Well, baby could be breathing right now, but what in 2 minutes? Is baby breathing then? You don't know. What if they stop? Oh, talk about a scary thing to be going on in your mind. And if in the back of your mind, you've got this bully that's saying, like, you have to check. You should go check. Could you imagine if baby died and it's because you didn't check? Those levels of anxiety where we're feeling keyed up on edge for something that could possibly go wrong. That's where you're starting to feel some of the anxiety. We're anticipating something is going to happen, and we're not able to reach that assurance that it won't happen. And that's stressful. The difference in that and the depression is depression, you might find that you have a lack of motivation. You don't want to get up. You don't want to shower. You're not really worried about anything that's happening. You just feel down. You don't feel yourself. But a big part of that you might see as a partner or as a parent is that they haven't showered in many days. I know it's hard as a mom to shower anyways, but we're talking like long periods of time, not taking care of themselves, not really having an urge to take care of themselves or take care of baby. Thoughts of suicide, thoughts of showing signs of hopelessness or helplessness. Again, there's the protocol of life is that we experience those to some degree. But oftentimes people say that, oh, this is the baby blues. And if it's after 48 hours after you've had the baby and we're still experiencing some intense feelings, and that is not baby blues. That is a time to be able to start asking for extra support and getting them to see somebody, because they don't need to suffer through that depressive or anxious state.
And when we talk about the time frame, what support do we have from our medical system to ensure that we are getting the proper care after those 48 hours?
That's a good question. depending on your provider, I think this is where you can advocate for yourself prior to being able to talk with the primary caregiver or your OB or whoever you have decided to work with for delivery, and say, what are we going to do post care? If I start to feel anxious or depressed, or I have a history of anxiety or depression, because some of those, we don't know exactly what creates or makes postpartum depression or anxiety, but we do know that some factors that if you have experienced some severe anxiety or depression prior to birth, that you're more likely to experience postpartum anxiety or depression. So being able to have that conversation and set up a plan. Now, we know plans can change, birth plans, all the things, but being able to talk with your provider and say, if I start to feel this way, what are we going to do? That is probably one of the best ways that you can prep yourself for the postnatal time. But being able to, if you haven't done that and you're finding yourself watching this podcast saying, well, we're in the middle of it right now, we don't have the plan. It's great to be able to start talking to your provider right now and say, what do you recommend? And if you find that you have a provider, it's like, I don't know. Ask friends. Ask another provider, call up other places, start looking for, like if you call up the healing group, you can ask we have a packet for postpartum. It's called PMAD, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So that would involve OCD, anxiety, depression, even psychosis that could be in there. If you start to notice that your partner is experiencing psychosis, that's a time to get to the hospital ASAP. But any of the other ones, if you were to call the healing group or some other organizations that specialize in maternal mental health, then there are a lot of ways that we can start saying, hey, this is what you can start right now while you're getting a new provider or trying to get some of that medical support.
Finding a provider while you're in the depths of it is such a hard experience.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I speak from my own experience.
Daunting.
But I wonder, so 6 weeks after your baby's born, you kind of wrap up your care with your maternal health provider. And so that's where I feel like there's this gap in like, who is actually taking care of me? Now, the me can be the mom, the me could be the dad.
Yes.
And realizing that we kind of have to be our own advocates and put things in place so that we have a safety net.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is the 6 week, for whatever reason, it's turned into, we don't see doctors anymore. And now we can have sex. And it's just such a black and white. No, that shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be, you now no longer have any medical support or care. And it absolutely does not need to be that now we can move directly back into penetrative sexual experiences. That's just too much, all black and white. So advocating for yourself, if you are feeling nervous about it, now granted, if you're experiencing postpartum anxiety, you're going to feel some nervousness about a lot of things. So being able to recognize, how can I set up a care plan and see if your doctor does do that? If not, the care can also move to the maternal or the mental side of things. And I would highly encourage having a therapist, even if you're not seeing them weekly, being able to see them every other week, join up with groups. We host weekly groups for moms that just had a baby, so that you can have some of those supports with other moms that are going through very similar situations. All of that we've seen really helps with the overall care of a mother's well-being.
And have you seen an increase of postpartum mood disorders in the last few years?
That's hard for me to say because my specialty is typically in the sexual health side of things. I've noticed an increase in men seeking support because that's who I'm actually working with. A lot of moms don't come to see me very often, but the guys do. I get a lot of men that are like, I don't know if I want to go see a female therapist, but I'll go see that guy. He seems pretty cool. And I have seen more men be more willing and open to having conversations about their mental state. Typically, it's based through my partner's having a hard time, and so I want to support them. I'm seeing a positive trend in that regard.
I know that a statistic of 1 in 4 women to experience a postpartum mood disorder, but it seems like it's increased.
Mm-hmm. That would seem like it to me as well, at least from when I've gone to the Postpartum Support International. Any of the PSI trainings, they're talking about that being the number is the one that's been diagnosed. And that's also a hard number to go off of. It's what we have, but those that go undiagnosed is pretty significant. I can tell you many, many stories of moms and dads but particular moms that come in and have been like, I just haven't felt myself in 3 years. So they've gone 3 years undiagnosed and suffering with anxiety and postpartum depression. And the main thing that we know is that as you catch it or as you recognize it and get support, you do get better. We know that through the methods that PSI has talked about and the therapy that we're doing, we're finding better methods of addressing it, and moms get better.
I love that message. It is very hopeful. And I love that we've been stressing a lot the preparation, because we in this podcast are seeking to help women prepare for pregnancy and birth. And so, as you said, if you can look at it in advance to anticipate what could happen, or having that support in place before you actually deliver, that will be more reliable than having to try and find it afterwards, though it can be found for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, let's move into a little bit more about this sexual intimacy portion, as it is more your genius and zone of where you hang out. And so what sort of conversations do men have as they come to you in introducing sex after a baby?
Big misconception is the 6 weeks. That's probably the first one, is that we're going to go see the doctor and then vaginal sex can happen. Part of this misconception is that usually infers that we're having no sexual or intimate connection during those 6 weeks. And oftentimes in pregnancy, even before then, just depending on male partner's experience and female partner's experience and desire, how they're feeling, it can vary on differing factors. So when the guys come and talk to me, they're like, so how do we, get sex back on the table? Because she's saying absolutely not. And I'm like going a little stir crazy here. And the first things that I talk to them about is, how are we engaging in emotional, mental, and physical intimacy? Now, intimacy is often coined as this like secret term that we can use instead of sex. We're like, we were being intimate. And we're like, well, what does intimate mean? So intimacy is a form of all of it. How are we feeling connection? I like to think of intimacy as a very close connection, and that could be physical through sexual connection, but also that can be through words, that can be through non-sexual touch, that can be through sharing emotions. All of those can be intimate without it being sexual.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they're talking about being sexually intimate. So I'm saying, how often are we holding hands? Are we cuddling? Are we kissing? Are we expressing desire for connection? Are we expressing gratitude to our partner? What are we doing in the meantime? And oftentimes it's shifted towards baby. So who's taking care of baby? What does baby need? What are naps? When are we taking naps? Then I've got to go to work, and maybe we're just getting ready to start going back to work if female partner's looking at returning to the workforce. So there's a lot of moving parts, and the couple that's one of the first things that goes onto the wayside. So we stop the intimate connection, and then the 6 weeks happen and go, sweet, we can get back into it. And it's like, I don't know. Plus, if we've had any type of birth trauma, we're not acknowledging that, healing, all sorts of things. So I start to encourage the men to understand that there's a lot of components to this. And if we have given up any of these other ones, it is a really hard shift to go from, we're taking care of baby, let's have vaginal sex. Let's ease into this. How can we experience, what do you want to experience? Do you want to experience an orgasm? Can you do that with partner in the room? How does that work if we're not using genitals? Or if your genitals are involved and hers are not, because we're still healing, we need to open up other experiences that are available and that she's open to and that you're open to, so we can build connection and pleasure over what act we're engaging in.
And that connection is so important, because as a new mom, you feel completely touched out. You feel completely exhausted. You don't even know if it's day or night. Mm-hmm. And so you lose that connection, but you want to have the connection again. What do we do? And how can we get there?
Especially if we move into, there's a common experience where a partner, and this can be male or female, but one partner, oftentimes being the touched out one, is like, oh, I am dying for a connection. And so I'd love to watch a movie, cuddle, and just be close. Partners then like, sweet, we have touch. Now we're moving towards sex. And so then there's this learned experience that, oh, we won't touch then unless we're about to have sex. So then touch stops. And we don't want to do that. So if you find yourself in that, which a lot of couples probably will find themselves being like, oh, that's exactly what it is. I am not touching my partner because if I do, then I'm like, oh, great, he's going to start thinking about sex. I don't want to, so I'm not going to engage in any type of touch. Being able to clarify, I'm not looking for sexual connection, or I might be able to get into that mood, but currently right now, I just want to feel close to you. And male partner going, okay, yeah, all right, let's do this. And while it may not move towards sex, if I'm interested in, say, an orgasm, is there a way that we can have this conversation so that it's not moving towards sex, but there's still an option for me to experience an orgasm if I'd like to? Or if I'm feeling turned on because we are kissing or we are touching, that it's not like, yeah, tough, sorry. What options can we start integrating so that we don't lose the touch in between?
And is that communication that is prompted by a male or a female, or is it an outside party who's saying, hey, both of you need to start communicating about this topic?
I think oftentimes when I see them, I'm the third party saying, hey, we need to start talking about this topic, because the couples that come in to see me after this are usually saying, I don't talk, I don't touch, I don't do anything because everything I seem to do, in fact, I'll change in another room now because everything I'm doing sexually excites him. And then that means that we've got to have sex. And so I'm trying to avoid this pressure for sex. And the other partner that is feeling like they want to engage is going, she's avoiding me. And so any time that we start to move into that, I'm dying for it. And so they start to scramble for the sexual connection. And then I have to help him reduce that level of intensity of like, here it is. Oh my gosh. And I have to encourage the partner to come in and say like, hey, let's start practicing being able to engage in the touch that you want to, while we can also have a no. And let's explore your agreements together of what is okay. Because the agreements beforehand may not be okay for the next 6 months to a year. If it's like, no, we don't have, let's say, masturbation in our relationship. I need to be present for all these things. Maybe that's a different experience. Maybe we bring that in a partnership. How do we start to engage that? And that depends on values and goals, as well as some of the methods that I can bring into the couple. But a lot of the times I'm that third party saying, we need to find out something different because this one is too binary.
Do most couples come to you in a place where they're able to regain this easily, or are they beyond help?
It's not. I haven't found a couple postpartum that is beyond help. I've found couples that have gone postpartum with 4 or 5 babies, and they haven't discussed this. They've just gone through the method, but about every 2 years they're having a baby, so they restart this cycle each time. And so all of a sudden on their 4th or 5th, they're like, we feel like roommates. We've been focusing on creating a family. Now we're at the family space, but now what? Now what do we do? That I've seen, and that's still not beyond help. That's just a lot of the patterns are much more ingrained. And so it can be a little bit harder to step out and go, well, if I start to do this with her, then I'm never going to have sex. I'm like, okay, we have to manage that stress. So that could possibly be. And then for the other side, well, if I start to give in any, then if I give him an inch, she's going to take a mile. And being able to support her and managing that distress. But it gets ingrained. The earlier we catch it, the more we can have a conversation, as we're talking about pre-baby, the more we can say like, okay, so what is our postnatal sexual health plan? Not necessarily at 6 weeks, we're going to do this thing, but depending on what happens, how do we want to communicate about what you're feeling good for, what I'm looking for, and how we can be open to pleasure and connection. The more we can focus pleasure and connection versus orgasm and what sexual act we're doing, the more success we can experience and the closer we can stay together.
I love that you've brought in all the layers. Like you said, it's not just the 6-week, okay, black and white, do we have sex, do we not? There's so much that goes into that, and there's so many components of intimacy that you brought in. Let's add another layer here. And how does body image affect everything? I know that a woman's body goes through so many changes. And what have you seen about the men and their reaction to that and how they navigate that?
So it's interesting. Female bodies, and this happens in lesbian relationships, this happens in LGBT relationships across the board. So individuals that have the baby and the body has gone through a massive transformation. Some find it very like, I'm a mother. And this is a mother body. Like, look, I've got my mother body. And the hard part is there can be a competition in that of like the excitement between like, look, I've gained, I can't remember, one mom said, I gained my stripes. And she had her stretch marks and things, and she was excited about that. And then there's the societal experience of like, oh, and now I need a tummy tuck. And now I need to get back into my, 9 months in, 9 months out has been quite the trend recently, where you've got a body that this is my 9 month after having, or with the baby, and then 9 months afterwards. And here I am, this fit person again. And the expectations are pretty heavy there. And so then we have breast changes, we have stomach, we have changes with the vulva, changes with vaginal experience. We also have just different parts of the body that has gained weight, has shifted, hormones have changed. So we really have a new body that we're trying to engage with. And for a lot of men, this change can feel different. Like, oh, how do I interact with this new body? Just as much as the female partner is experiencing, what am I doing with this new body? A lot of men I've heard talk about, like, this is cool. Like, this is the partner that I'm with, that she went through all these changes for this child that I have, or these children that we have together. And there's a massive amount of appreciation. And at the same time, we still live in a society where we can have this piece. And then on the other side, it's kind of like, oh, but younger. Oh, but tighter body. Oh, but this is what we should look like. Should you get to the gym? Should you this? And I see a lot of the pitfalls is the guys are trying to be supportive, and they start stating things that are much more critical. Of like, hey, well, why don't you get to the gym? It's like, ooh, what is our goal? Is our goal to be able to have physical fitness? Is our goal to look a certain way? If the goal is to look a certain way, we need to adjust our viewpoints. All bodies are different, and the more we can give thanks for the body that we have and what's happened. I try and tell the men, she just went through a massive body change. You didn't have to go through that. So we need some empathy in regards to it. And also, I need to cut out that just because she's had a baby does not, this whole like she's become loose and this sex is not going to be the same. If it's adjusted, okay, it's adjusted. And at the same time, that's what the body's supposed to do. It's not this like, oh, female bodies didn't know they were going to have this baby's head go through. And now it's like, well, this is horrible, but there's changes that do happen. And the more that we can accept that, the better we can be. The difference is that some guys experience it differently, and some guys aren't nice. And that's an unfortunate part. I often try and challenge, but that's not a guarantee. So if you find yourself with a partner that is not as nice, that they're being critical, challenging that can be supportive. Getting into a therapist, helping read books about what to expect when you're expecting, if you will, and trying to stay away from the social norms is going to be one of the best ways. But we're ingrained with it from childhood of what you're supposed to be, and so those are hard. Those are hard ones to change.
Well, I have found that for a woman, if she's able to accept her mom bod, it seems easier for the male to then say, I accept it too, and embrace it on both sides, instead of having those unrealistic expectations that nothing is meant to change or shift or look different or feel different, like after your birthing years.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm curious for the two of you, as you've had friends or you've talked with other individuals, when someone is going through a body change, what's been the most supportive way to accept those changes? What have you guys seen?
That is a good question. I think, like you said, giving yourself grace and gratitude, and maybe just saying affirmations in the mirror if you need to, or maybe some bridge statements. So you maybe can't get to, I love my body, but maybe you can get to, oh, my body just did this thing, and taking those stepping stones back to acceptance.
Love it. Love it. Anything for you?
I think it's about time, recognizing that the time that we have invested into growing our baby, and then the time that we spend raising that baby, or like you were saying, the 9 months in, 9 months out, it's not always 9 months. And for some, it's 3 months, and all of a sudden they look like they have never even had a baby. But just recognizing that in time, that love and acceptance for our bodies can also shift, and that's okay. It's okay for it to shift one way or the other.
Yes.
And And like I said, I feel like my own confidence can help to bolster the confidence of my partner when I say I love my body and I'm so grateful that it was able to bear these children. And also there's a sense of pride that I can say, hey, I gained 50 pounds and I lost those 50 pounds.
Mhm.
And knowing that through hard work and effort, but not doing it because society tells me I have to, but because I feel great.
That's
And
it.
I love the feeling of being able to lift those weights and lift my baby and feel like strong again.
Yes. I love the way that you're talking about the way you feel. The more we focus on 9 months in, 9 months out, 50 pounds up, 50 pounds down, anything where we start looking numbers on an arbitrary, this is the weight that you're pushing against the world, it doesn't allow for muscle gain. It doesn't allow for ability. And oftentimes moms have felt a disability. Like, okay, I can't do certain things. Whether because baby's not letting me or because I went through the surgery, or if you have a C-section at all, like you have days where you can't sit up.
Mhm.
There's a form of disability that we experience, and the more that we can focus on what you can do versus how much weight you've gained or how much you see more in areas of your body, the more satisfaction you can gain because you have control or you have more influence over things that you can do or that you can try and focus on, such as I would like to get to a place where I feel like I can run back to where I was, or that I can continue running, versus changing and challenging your body to be who they were versus being able to go, what does this look like now? Because you're also trying to gain the different things in your body. And we know that if you're trying to gain strength, your body needs sleep. Babies aren't notorious for allowing you to sleep. So if you aren't having that sleep, you're still working up a hill. And the more grace you can give yourself and go, this is wonderful, I can pick up my baby. This is wonderful that even after short nights of sleep, I'm still able to, I was still able to do this one thing. Yes, the dishes aren't done and the house seems like it's a wreck. And I was also able to take care of my baby today. And that is a massive win. There's plenty of time down the road to be able to clean a house. If you need some extra support, get some extra support. Those are the things we can start looking at. But I think the biggest problem that we run into for men and for women is that there's so much focus on you need to do it. And if you don't do it, no one else is going to, and you failed. You need to do it on your own. You need to make sure your wife, in fact, these guys are like, I want to make her feel. You can't make her feel. You can feel a certain way. You can advocate for yourself. You can push for support for her and for you, but you can't make her do that. And the same thing goes for if you're feeling down, if you're feeling comparative and you're comparing yourself to others, find people on social media that actually talk about the truth, show their stretch marks, show their imperfections, show what their house looks like. And they're like, this is what I'm doing and this is what today brought. The more we can do acceptance, the less we're going to have the comparison and the shame that I can't do it.
And our society has been embracing those shifts. Every bod is a bikini bod.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has been.
Yes, I love those changes in perspective and even verbiage as you were talking, because I've heard so many times, oh, I've got to get my body back, but it's not about that. It's about, this is the body I'm stepping into. This is my finding a new normal, finding what helps you feel good and focusing on that instead of trying to go back to the past.
Absolutely. If we can focus on health, health is a really arbitrary experience where we have certain things that doctors can say, this is within a bell curve, which is great. You're within a bell curve. If you are beyond that, let's make some adjustments on either side. And the hard part is we start trying to get back to bodies and going beyond babies. We are obsessed with trying to become teenagers and young 20s again. Obsessed, right? So you can get Botox, you can get lifts, you can get all sorts. I mean, shoot, go down I-15. All you have to do is see all the different, dude, there's a dad bod makeover that I just saw. I was like, oh, they're shifting to us. So there's a dad bod makeover and there is a mommy makeover and there's all the things to be able to get you back to these late teens, early 20s. And it's not happening. All of us are getting older. All of it, we're going to get wrinkles. We can buy all the creams. We can do the things and it can help us age differently, for sure. Taking care of your body, skincare is called skincare for a reason. You're caring for it. It's not bringing you back to the 20s. It's taking care of it, which can help it stay elastic and all the other things. Just as much as you're going for a run or doing cardiovascular work, is not getting your heart back to its 20s, but it's helping your blood vessels stay vascular. So important. that aspect of it is what I'd like to see brought into the postpartum experience. Of my body has changed and I don't have to go back to what it was, but I want to maintain and explore what looks healthy to me and what feels good to me, versus having a direct point of, once I get here, I'll experience happiness, where we can say, let's experience happiness now while I'm still on this journey of making change. Because once you get there, guess what? You change. You change.
And your happiness won't be affected by a number.
No, it doesn't.
Especially on the scale.
It doesn't. Talk to bodybuilders. Fascinating to talk to bodybuilders. You see them up on stage. They're at 3% body fat to 12% body fat, depending if you're watching men or women. And they will talk about the misery they've gone through to get to that. They have cut water. They've cut foods. They've cut all sorts of things to be able to get this physique. That physique being oiled up, tanned up on stage is for a moment. And immediately once they eat, the body goes back into storing water, storing these different, the nutrients that you need. They don't look like that all the time. And oftentimes it can become somewhat of a feeling of obsession to be able to get back to a single point in time, to look like what it was on stage. And to talk about that, that's what we see. And we see these Instagram models and they have that point in time that they've worked really hard to get to a point in time. But as soon as they eat, as soon as there's something else, the body shifts. So even if we're saying I want to be at a certain number on the scale, a number on my body fat, good heavens, we're going to change. We change consistently. So we want to stay within the healthy side of things.
This conversation about mental health and physical health has been so enlightening. What else do you have to share with us about how we can prepare or how we can help ourselves in the postpartum?
The preparing side of things, because of the intimate side, I think that the important part when I'm talking with men in particular, but also the things that we talk about for female experience, is when you're going through your natal experience, find ways that you can connect that are sexual, that are also, that allow for movement, such as, I mean, first, one of the big things you got to experience is you've got this stomach, right? You've got the belly. The baby at 8 months is there and present. And so there can be some uncomfortable things, such as, well, baby's present. And there can be a psychological experience around like, oh, how do I feel about knowing there's another human that's here? And maybe our typical sexual positions are not viable. So how do we roll with that? That level of curiosity and exploration is what I would encourage every couple to go through. To get to a place where you can go, okay, so baby at 8 months and sexual experience at 8 months is going to look different than what it looked like 3 weeks postpartum to 5 months postpartum to 2 years postpartum. Like, it's going to look and feel different. So trying to get back to where we were, let's not jump straight back to what we think we know. Let's start exploring with what touch feels good now, because that changes from sensations to genitals, sensations to breasts, sensations to just parts of our back. Experiences like that can be fun to start exploring touch. I think the hard part is we often, as a society, focus on what we're going to do with our genitals. And I try and help people expand that to, let's hold hands, let's kiss, let's touch, let's find what closeness we can experience and how I can express the excitement I'm having that baby's coming and maybe the nervousness that I'm experiencing. I push dads to do that all the time. Share with her what is going on, the things you're excited about, the things you're nervous about. The stress level that they often experience is, if I express nervousness, then what if that activates anxiety? What if that creates more stress? And it could. And at the same time, there is a level of, we can tolerate that distress and know that just because we're worried about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. The same thing can go with intimate connection. The more we can be explorative, see what feels good, see what doesn't feel good, and not feel this rejection of like, don't do that, that's bad. It's like, oh, I don't really like being touched like that as much as I used to. Let's explore over here. What about that? What about this? The more we can be curious and seek for pleasure and connection, if at the end of a touching, connecting, verbalizing experience, you feel connected with your partner and you've been feeling pleasure, you are ahead of the game. And if you're wanting an orgasm, great, voice that. And we can create a space where that is something that we can identify. What is she open for? What is he open for? How can we experience what we'd like to? And don't take things as personally. The more we can talk about it before the birth, the more we can have that practice after birth when we have another big change that we're dealing with and we're in uncharted territory.
Wow. Well, I think that is unique to be able to combine those two, because it seems like if you're being open and connective and having those discussions about your fears and your worries and the things that are going on, that will also bring forth the mental and emotional preparation as well as help with the physical. So that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Well, we love to talk about resources to share either books or other experts that you have found bring light to these topics. Do you have any to share with us today?
Daniel Singley is in California, and he has taken on like for dads. He's like postpartum father, like we need to be remembered, and he gives presentations with the baby Bjorn and baby in front. Like he's taken on fatherhood, and it is really cool to watch his organization do research on postpartum with fathers, on what to, I'm trying to remember what he puts it together as, but I want to say he was one of the ones that coined the portfolio. Like, let's do like investments, but we're investing with our family. So what are you doing with your portfolio of the time you're spending with your baby and with partner and on yourself? And he's very much an activist for fathers. So Daniel Singley, and I think it's like Singley. Great to look him up online. His organization in California is wonderful. I think that obviously the group that I run, the Man Cave, it blows my mind every month that we meet together that these questions come up. Like, hey, my wife's experiencing this anxiety. She won't let mother-in-law or my mom babysit. We haven't been on a date in 18 months, and it feels like a fight for this, but if I say that, then this, and like we really get down into the niche to like, oh, you really have an issue. But this is hard. And having the other guys step in and be like, hey, we kind of experienced something like that, and this is what I did, and this is some of the things that happened for me. So we're a bunch of guys being able to say, these are some options. I know it's really hard, but this is what you might be able to do, and have your ability to ask questions either anonymously or in front of the group. And we have guys connecting with guys about being a father. And I've got some that have teenagers. They don't have brand new babies. So we've got like the old guard, but they're still trying to figure out things with their spouse. And then we got people that I've got a guy in there that's they're due in 2 months. And so anywhere in between, the guys are welcome to be there.
And is that in person or virtual or both?
That's virtual. So anyone, because it's a group, it's not based on state. I have people in California, Oregon, a lot of people here in Utah that show up. I send out an RSVP. We get at least 3 people that show up, or at least 3 people that RSVP, and then anyone else is welcome to join the group, because we're all in it with what's happening in their experience.
I love that. All in it together.
Yeah.
One of the books that I really found helpful in navigating postpartum depression was Silent Souls Weeping.
Oh.
And I jotted down a quick quote from that. She said, healing from depression is not a linear process. It's a journey with ups and downs, victories and setbacks. It requires patience, persistence, and most importantly, self-compassion.
Oh, I love that.
I just felt like it was so prevalent to know that it's not going to be just here on up, that there was going to be some ups and downs, but in time, all wounds heal. And with resources that you're providing and your practice and this Man Cave, which we're all going to jump on and
love it.
Get our husbands to come check you out. There is healing and resources and just so many good things that you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today.
No problem.
Yes, I love that we've been talking about how it's a journey. It's not a one and done, and we're always changing, and just to be there on that ride. And also we share every episode just the Mom Squad secrets, and this week it's from Evelyn, and she said, make sure family members pitch in to help with dishes, diaper changes, and laundry. This takes emotional pressure off of a mom and lets her heal and rest. And just, you spoke to that a lot, just getting that support and the resources and the people there, so that it does free up some of the bandwidth or the capacity to have that intimacy and to focus on your mental health.
Yeah, no problem at all. I do want to say that the Man Cave is free. That is something the Healing Group offers just as a social support. We do have other groups that are available, and If you're looking for like the postpartum packet, we do have postpartum packets. If you call the front desk or email the front desk at the Healing Group, there's resources that we'd love to provide to moms, dads.
Great.
So that's an option.
Yeah, we will definitely link those in the show notes. Well, thank you, Braxton, for joining us today. It was fabulous to hear a perspective that we don't often hear about with pregnancy and birth.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. We hope you've been elevated and inspired by this week's expert.
Subscribe today so you never miss an episode. And please share our podcast or post on your social media so that other moms and dads-to-be can also have the best birth.
Please note that the information provided is based on the expert's insights and personal experience. It is not intended as medical guidance. Please seek the advice of your medical provider as it applies to your specific condition.